We have here the deep roots of racial division and the moral crisis of our time. Our region intimately knows the long shadows cast by racism. We know it from slavery to Jim Crow. Now we got Jim, John, and SR Point 2. We got all these things happening in today's inequalities. But just like jazz gave voice to generations silenced by oppression We want prayer